Hello, and welcome back to our series of studies on the great 19th century philosopher named Soren Kierkegaard. I wrote a book on his philosophy named Soren Kierkegaard, Night of Infinite Resignation. It can be bought on Amazon.com, and I hope everybody buys a copy of my book and follows along with this series of studies. I admit I've been remiss in explaining SK in further depth. We started this study at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we never finished quite. So the reason for these videos that I'm putting on YouTube is to complete the series of studies. So far, we've got 21 studies of SK on YouTube. Now, that just incorporates the aesthetic sphere, which we have been studying. The aesthetic sphere is the widest possible sphere of all of existence. It incorporates everything we have been discussing up until now. But now in lesson 22, I wish to go on to the ethical sphere. And by the way, this is my birthday, and as everybody knows, I was born on December 27th, Saturday at 6 p.m. So I think it's about 6 p.m. Okay, so in honor of my birthday at 6 p.m., I'm going to publish this on YouTube. Okay, well, all right, now let's get serious about this. Okay, now we're going on into the ethical sphere of SK's existential philosophy. And I'm doing a whole other book, and one of the three books on these subjects. It's huge, it's complex, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it in my lifetime, but God has called me to do this, so I'm doing this. Really, the understanding of SK needs to be explained. We need to reinterpret, we need to re-understand SK in terms of both philosophy, metaphysics, and theology. He's an incredibly brilliant intellectual and theologian. And so it's critical here, and this is my goal, and one of my goals in life, is to really explain what his thinking was all about. I've been studying existentialism and Jaspers, Heidegger, Sartre, and others in their misunderstanding of what SK really meant by Christian, because it is Christian, unabashedly Christian, existentialism. So my next book on SK will be Christian Existentialism, Content, Form, and Style. I'm working on it. It's going to take a lot of work, I admit, but it has to be done for history and posterity. So here we go on into the ethical sphere of existence. That SK analyzed. The ethical sphere is really a transitional phase between the road to perdition, the aesthetic sphere, and the religious sphere. It's an intermediate stage. And we've actually talked a lot about that before in the prior chapters of the book. But now specifically, we go into the ethical sphere. Now for SK, Soren Kierkegaard, you can call him Soren Kierkegaard, whatever you want. SK works for me. Americans call him Soren Kierkegaard. In the ethical sphere, what we're looking at is a transition where the self, let me put it in common terms, the self realizes, look, the road I'm going down, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, addiction to gambling, addiction to sex, or whatever it is that has so compelled me, so controlled my life, I want to get done with. I want to move on to something more important. And for SK, the best way to understand the ethical sphere is in terms of marriage. So he wrote two wonderful, wonderful books about this. One was Either Or, Volume 2, and the other was Stages on Life's Way. In his various observations about marriage in reply to objections. Now, both of these were written by his pseudonym, Judge William Affam. This was his pseudonym to explain all of the aesthetic objections to marriage, which we've covered in our prior 21 videos, which were 30 minutes each. So that was 630 minutes so far. Okay, so now we go on into the ethical sphere of existence. And in my book, what I try to do is give you an overall summary of what SK is all about. And in no way does this mean that this is a substitute for SK. By no means. I never meant that. But to give you an introduction into what SK is all about. There's a lot more to go. We're maybe at most halfway through the book. Okay, so in my book, SK, Night of Infinite Resignation, we go on into the ethical in chapter 8. For SK, outside of religion, no other human experience reveals so much about existence as does the institution of marriage. It's interesting that a highly developed intellectual person like SK wrote more about marriage than any other topic. He was never married. He never had a very close relationship with his own mother. But this was his main topic, the primary topic he talked about through much of his writings. He wrote more about marriage than any other subject. In SK's pseudonymous empire, Judge William, an ethicist, addresses the young man, an aesthete, person in the aesthetic life. In William Affam's opinion, the aesthete, the young man, is still a hopeful case. We've seen in our prior analysis of human beings, we've seen the levels of depression. We've seen the levels of the aesthetic world in terms of the degradation of the person. Can't think of the right word right now. But deprivation. We've seen different levels of deprivation in different people that we've analyzed so far. But Judge William sees in the young man, which was S.K. as a young man, a hopeful case. He's not case hardened. He still is a person who can go on and learn new things. A lot of people get hardened. They've learned everything, and that's who they are. And that's who they are for the rest of their lives. But in William Affam's, Judge William Affam's opinion, young man is still a hopeful case who can go on beyond the aesthetic to understand the ethical. And once again, for S.K. or William Affam, the most important topic of the ethical is marriage, how it needs to be preserved and fulfill. It is Judge William's wish to persuade his young friend, as a concerned father or mother might address a bachelor son. You, in spite of all your bizarre qualities, I love as a son, as a brother, as a friend. I love with an aesthetic love because someday you will perhaps succeed in finding a center for your eccentric movements. I love you for the sake of your impetuosity, for the sake of your passions, for the sake of your foibles. I love you with the fear and trembling of religious love, because I see the devious paths you are treading, and because to me you are something quite other than a phenomenon. You are not really an enemy of marriage, but you abuse your gifts for irony and sarcasm by making mock of it. As I have remarked, one cannot say that you hate marriage, for doubtless your thought has never yet got to that subject, at least not without being scandalized by it. And so you must forgive me for assuming that you have never thought about the matter. What you have is a predilection for the first sensation of falling in love. This enamorous attitude, this first exhilaration of love and what it is. With these preliminary remarks, Judge William Affam begins his observations with two major objects in mind: to show the aesthetic significance of marriage, to show how the aesthetic element in it may be held fast in spite of the manifold obstacles of actual life. In other words, how to try to preserve the exhilaration of first love in marriage itself. Judge William Affam begins with this affirmation about his own wife. But there is one thing for which I thank God with my whole soul, namely, that she is the only one I have ever loved. the first one. And there is one thing for which I pray, God, with my whole heart, that he will give me strength never to want to love any other. First love, the love of life. There is no other love besides the first. If there were, then why have marriage at all? I mean, because because if you can fall in love numerous times in life, what's the purpose of marriage to one person? Doesn't make any sense. But the key to fulfilling love in a higher sphere is to sublimate it to the ethical. And so this is William Affam's topic in both Either Or Volume 2 and Stages on Life's Way. I got that book at the University of Wyoming. I think it's now in publication again. I think you can get it on Amazon.com. I'm pretty sure. But at the time I got my copy, it was out of print. So I had to go over to the University of Wyoming, which is about 50 miles west of Cheyenne, where I'm recording. And I got my copy off of photograph machine. Okay, so so now we go on with this whole task of William Affam, how to make the exhilaration of first love into the romantic love into a marriage. So this is the whole topic of what William Affam, the judge William Affam, is talking about. A lot of complications in all of this, and I recommend anyone to go through all of it and study it. That's not the purpose of my book, except to introduce. In romantic love, so he has a lot of descriptions about what romantic love is. The exhilaration, the experience. But if it doesn't transform itself into a higher sphere of existence, that is the ethical sphere, it's never going to be happy. For what distinguishes all love from lust is the fact that it bears an impress of eternity. The sensual is the momentary. The sensual seeks instant satisfaction, and the more refined it is, the better it knows how to make the instant and enjoyment of enjoyment a little eternity. Even if man goes to a prostitute, makes fornication with a prostitute, to make it a little bit of eternity, make it a little bit extra, there has to be some value in the eternal. That's fornication, concupiscence, whatever you want to call it. But to make it more satisfactory, the prostitute needs to learn how to make it a little bit extra, a little bit of eternity. Now, I know I'm getting crude, but it's true. Between man and woman, that the fornication needs to be avoided in terms of marriage. That's why all sex needs to be transformed by God into a higher ethical sphere by the church in marriage. And it's really incredibly unfortunate that we've lost that understanding of what marriage is all about. That it is God's transformation of what is really carnal, due to sin into a higher ethical sphere. In romantic love, the lovers discover quickly that it is only transient. It only happens for a little bit. Therefore, they seek a deeper meaning or reflection. For Judge William, it is Christianity that marriage finally achieves its ultimate meaning and sanctifies marriage by giving it its ultimate reflection. Not even in Judaism was the understanding its equal. A so-called marriage of convenience, Judge William quickly dismisses as the way of achieving a happy marriage. The other expedient, the other expedient, besides lust, is the respectable way of a convenient marriage. Marriage, well, let's see, I'll marry this guy because he's a king, he's wealthy, whatever. The mere mention of it shows that person intervenes, whoever he is, in arranging a marriage, or she or he in arranging a marriage for convenience. One person and another. A marriage of convenience is therefore to be regarded as a sort of capitulation necessitated by the complications of life. So, Judge rejects that quickly. So his whole goal in both of these works is, number one, to show that marriage is the transfiguration of first love, not its annihilation. That is, it is its friend, not its enemy. And for the task, which to others is very trivial, but to me it is all the more important, of showing that my humble marriage has had such a meaning for me, so that from it I derive strength and courage to fulfill constantly this task. So this is William Affam speaking as an ethicist in the favor of marriage as the highest revelation of life outside of religion. It's the greatest thing a man or woman can obtain outside of religion. But first of all, Judge Williams' primary observation about marriage is it has to be due to love. It can't be due to money. It can't be due to convenience. It has to be between two people who really, truly love each other. And that can be sometimes very difficult, and I know this myself, to distinguish between true love and infatuation. They're very similar. But that's a whole different topic that we might be able to go into at some future time. But so often in life, first love does not fulfill itself into marriage. And SK was a perfect example of this with his relationship with the love of his life, Regina Olesen. He never got over Regina Olesen. And she was his first love from beginning to end. And Judge William observes, it is a fine and healthy sign when a man has had ill luck with his first love, when he has learned to know the pain of it, but is yet maintained faithful to his first love, has yet preserved faith in first love. It is fine if then, in the course of years, he sometimes recalls it vividly. And though his soul has been sound, recalls enough to take leave, as it were, of this kind of life in order to consecrate itself to something higher. It is fine if he remembers sadly that which, although it was not perfection, was nevertheless so beautiful. So this is a description of S.K.'s love for Regina Olesen, who got married not too long after they broke up. It left him brokenhearted. It turned him into a great author, great philosopher. The centuries will remember forever. But it was a broken heart that really got S.K. writing so much. And we've talked a lot about that in our prior discussions that we've gone through on S.K. and through the chapters preceding chapter 8. So now we've got what? 4 minutes to go. Okay, so now we get into what really characterizes first love. I mean, what do we know about it? How can we recognize it? And here's Judge William Affam's description. First love is characterized as a unity of freedom and necessity. Like everything eternal, it has the double propensity of presupposing itself back into eternity. This is the element of truth in what the poets have often said so beautifully, to the effect that the lovers, even at first sight, feel that they have already loved one another for a long time. It's a spiritual harmony, a relationship that you experience once in life until death. After death of one of the loved ones, it's possible that you can re-experience that. But unfortunately, we don't have quite the understanding that we should of what love really truly is and what a gift from God it is. Unfortunately, in our time and age, we've missed this. We don't understand. Since the sexual revolution, marriage is very poorly understood. So this is Judge Williams' exposition here to reintroduce what marriage really truly is. Love involves a transfiguration, a spiritualization which lasts his whole life. In him, there is a union of all life factors, which ordinarily are dispersed. He is at the same moment both younger and older than men commonly are. He is a man and yet a youth, yea, almost a child. He is strong and yet so weak. He is a harmony which is, as it were, echoes through the whole of his life. So, William Affam goes on and analyzes this first love, what really it is, what a great treasure, what a great spiritualization and gift it is from God himself. So for right now, I only have 30 minutes. My producer will kill me if I go over that. So we'll quit right now on page 205. Hopefully you have my book and can follow along. And we'll proceed again tomorrow, hopefully, with the ethical sphere. Thanks.